We, Africa Education Watch, CDD, had put together to try and help you make sense of what the party is promising for the 2020 elections. And of course, you know, the manifesto tracker itself also sits on the Super Morning Show, where Imani is also playing a central role in helping us digest this. This is important in an election year where issues, the president has said, is about track records. And so we want to stay there with the issues. Let's go through what we've put together for you. And Kofi, we tried to look at 2016, 2020, because this is a party in power. And so we want to look at the pure numbers. So if you look at 2016 on education, the NPP promised 26, individually 26 promises we found. In 2020, there's a drop to 19. And as people say, when you see a drop from one election year to the next, when the party is in power, it shows some reality check is setting in. You can't put in as much of the promises as I guess you would have put in at the beginning. So that is the first picture to look at. We also look at entirely new promises that we find in the 2020 manifesto. We counted 13 of them. If you look at those that have been repeated or are similar in some shape or form, we counted 6. We'll go through some of the specifics of the repeated and similar promises for you, and then we'll go into some analysis. Let's go into some of the key analysis here. And Kofi, this is important, right? These are outcomes, education outcomes. You are the expert in the field. Why are education outcomes important?
Well, educational outcomes are very, very important in the sense that as we invest in education, we don't invest because of the inputs. Okay, so we spend resources from the budget, we invest in education inputs with the aim of ensuring that the inputs manifest at the school level in terms of intermediate outcomes that can have a bearing on quality. And so issues relating to percentage of trained teachers, for example, is going to be an intermediate outcome resulting from the investment of X amount of money from our budgets, to recruit teachers. And so when you recruit more teachers, more trained teachers, it must have an impact on reducing the class size to the level that our education strategic plan, which is the teacher, the teaching, the PTR norms dictate, or the convention established by UNESCO for 8 member countries. And so anytime we recruit, we development practitioners look at how the recruitment of teachers is affecting the amount of students or pupils each teacher has to handle in the class.
Is that what you would call the people-teacher ratio?
Exactly, that's the people-teacher ratio. And
now, so the important point to note about this particular table here is, and this is from CDD, all the data you see there is from CDD, by the way, they've been putting this together. Their emphasis is that whatever any party promises, measure it based on the outcomes. Okay, so if you say you want to increase, number of teachers in the classrooms, can you tell us, by doing that, by making that input, what is the end result you expected? Okay, so you want to increase people-teacher ratio by what exactly? It's a key point. Okay, so CDD has been insisting that let's push the politicians to be more outcome-oriented in making the promises. In the education sector, it's important. These indicators here are some of the most important indicators you will look at to judge how successful an education intervention, education policy has been. It is not exhaustive by any stretch of the imagination, because there's far more. But this tells us a story. I want to quickly go through that very briefly for you. And this is the first year of the NPP administration, right? First year, 2017, 2018, the percentage of trained teachers, Kofi, was 83%. When John Mahama's last year, 2016, 2017, it was down at 76%. If you go further back, that's John Mahama's first full year as president in 2012, 2013. He won the election in 2012, right? And then he continued in 2013. It was as low as 67%. The NPP came to power, and that outcome shot up in their first full academic year to 83%. So that is good, correct?
Correct. That is good. And one significant thing to note here is that we don't train teachers in a year.
Okay.
And so probably if we did 2018, 2019, if we had MS data, you would have seen that this number would have been going up.
And by the way, we don't have that yet.
Exactly,
yes.
That is not ready.
Yes.
And so this is the most current figure we have. And so you find that even though it moved from 76 to 83, the actual training would have taken place before the NPP came into power. But the key thing here is that the initiative to employ more teachers actually led to this. And so it is worthy of mention that this is an outcome of
another thing that is key to watch again, and we're going to be watching this, all the promises NPP is making, would it lead to, for example, people textbook ratio? When the NPP came into power, the first full academic year, interpret this for me, 1.21, the ratio, people to textbook. Is this good?
Okay, so this shows an improvement in access to textbook. I mean, I'm talking about the core textbooks used at the primary level. So this shows an improvement per people to the core textbooks at the basic level. So this is an improvement. And obviously, we expect that there will always be improvement because periodically, the Ministry of Education, the GNS will procure textbooks to replace worn-out ones and also to augment for increase in enrollment at the basic level.
So again, the trend continues. NPP's first full academic year, they managed to increase the people textbook ratio from as low as 0.43, ratio terms in 2012, 2013 to 1.21, which is good again. The key point you're raising is all the promises you are putting forward, this figure here must increase even more going forward.
Exactly, because ideally, every student at the basic level must have the full complement of textbooks. That's how of core textbooks. That's how the indicator is actually tracked.
There's something else I want to quickly bring. This is the pupil-teacher ratio you talked about earlier. And we are currently, NPP, this is the latest data we have. Currently, pupil-teacher ratio, that is the number of teachers for,
the number of pupils each teacher averagely handles in a class.
We are currently at what? 31.
Exactly.
So this is 31 pupils.
Exactly.
Per teacher.
Per teacher.
Okay. Is this a standard? Where are we with this? Is it what the international standard says?
Okay, let me explain this further. Now, our pupil-teacher norms per the current education strategy plan 2018 to 2030 indicate that at the primary level, we should have a pupil-teacher norm of 1:30.
And this is primary we are talking about.
Exactly.
So 30.
So 1:30. So any number above 30 is a deviation from the standard we set for ourselves. Now, this number here is the national average. Okay. But if you go to rural areas, especially in regions like Ashanti region and then also in the northern regions, you would find higher PTRs in most deprived communities. Okay. But the national average is actually a bit lower because in urban and peri-urban areas, there's actually an overpopulation of teachers, which reduces the ratio. But what is significant here is that the ratio was 27. It means that there were fewer pupils being handled by a teacher in 2016, 2017. Okay,
so,
and then
the lesser the number, the better.
The lesser the better.
Okay.
The lesser the better. And so it means that we actually retrogressed by 4 percentage points more or less, by 4 between 2017 and 2018.
Okay.
Again, this is 2017, 2018 data. But being a sector practitioner and being aware of the recruitment of teachers that have taken place in the past 3 years, about 50,000 teachers have been recruited. And so this figure if MS data should be available for 2019, it's going to be lower.
It's going to be lower. And lower means better.
Of course, lower
means better. Exactly. Okay, good. Yeah. So I guess the point to make is, and the NPP will look at the promises shortly.
Yeah.
One of the promises that they're going to increase teacher recruitment.
Oh, okay.
So you're expecting that outcome that we can measure at the end is that this 31% should be better, should be lower.
Should be lower,
and better.
Exactly.
Okay, let's quickly change this one for JHS. JHS also has a similar story. Percentage of trained teachers when NPP's first full academic term, it was a 91, which is pretty high, right? The trained teachers really shot up. If you compare it from the 2012, 2013 at 85%, they did pretty well there, right? I mean, in that full year, you've explained the dynamics there. And so this continues. The main point to note is that everything you read in the NPP Manifesto, and soon the NDC Manifesto, they should be delivering on some. If they are not delivering on any of these, there are questions there to raise, okay? So let's go through some of the key things now. Repeated and similar promises. We just want to focus on 2 for now. Collaborate with the private sector. This is simply providing Wi-Fi to schools. It was in the 2016 manifesto. This is on your left. On the right is the 2020 manifesto. It's been repeated almost verbatim, but you have an update.
Yes. The rationale for repeating promises in manifestos generally are normally to consolidate gains made in projects that are ongoing. In the case of the Wi-Fi, we have been monitoring the implementation of this contract. Contractor has been selected, work has commenced, I think as far back as February. We tracked schools in February that contractors were out laying cables and all that. And so this is a work in progress. We expect to be completed by next year. And so it is only proper for it to be repeated. Not only for the sake of emphasis, but then for continuity.
I guess that's why
consolidation.
This word is important.
Exactly. So they have to complete it.
The provision of free Wi-Fi.
And I think they've added. It used to be and tertiary
for senior, secondary, and tertiary institutions.
But now we have
senior secondary schools, public tertiary institutions, and training colleges.
Because now we have colleges of education, and so there's actually an expansion because they are now tertiary institutions.
Yeah, great.
So it's a step in the right direction.
Great point. We have the Deputy Information Minister, Deputy Education Minister with us, joining us shortly. He's already on set listening to this, and so when we have clarity, you see him in your shot there. Yeah, that's him, Dr. Duchum. He will get to clarify a few of this. Once we are done. So again, I don't want to spend too much time here, but you see it, ensure that children with special needs are, whenever possible, integrated within regular schools. Again, you see here, increase resources, infrastructure for special needs education across the country. Well, it's similar, it's almost the same, but it's...
Yeah, but the issue here is that this particular...
The 2016 one?
Yes, it was challenging to realize because of the absence of assessment centers in most of, in Ghana.
Okay.
Very few assessment centers exist. For you to be able to be diagnosed of having a special need, okay, you need to be taken through a screening process. And normally this is done by an assessment center. Of course, there are various methods being done innovatively at the school level to determine various degrees of disability. But then fundamentally, they have to be functional assessment centers. And so one of the challenges that we faced in the past 3.5 years have been having adequate access to adequate assessment centers to ensure that children with special needs are able to have the detection of their disability early enough, and then also either integrated or taken to special schools.
Okay, good. I want to quickly move on to flagged. And we flagged this promise, and I'll tell you why we flagged it. Complete the implementation of the 5-year strategic plan on the TVET, the emphasis why we flagged it, and establish a national skills development fund. Point is, skills development fund already exists. So when you say you're going to establish it, it raises questions for me, and we will get clarity from the Deputy Education Minister. Because since 2011, the fund, which already exists, very well established under the TVET general policy of government, they have given out as many as 510 guarantees worth 87 million cedis already. So they are working, and they have funding. They have funding from Danida, but that funding is for a 4-year project which ends this year. Okay. Now the SDF has a plan going forward post 2020 Danida funding. They want to bring in. They want to move from donor dependence to government dependence. Okay, which is a key point. So my point here is, a new NPP government, in terms of promising, can only continue to fund. This should have probably read, we will continue to fund, not establish, because this fund already exists. I see Dr. Duchum shaking his head. We'll come to hear him what he says about that very shortly. Not to establish a new one. Quick comment on this.
Well, the SDF has been in existence. It was proposed as part of the TVET reforms, in the early, 2009-2008 era. And so it was recommended, and then started with the World Bank supporting the first one through the Ghana Skills and Technology Development Project. And so it is true that about $60 million went into the first SDF one. And then after it ended, sustainability issues kicked in as usual. And so Danida supported the SDF2, which is ending in sometime November this year. My information is that it's a new World Bank project coming on, the region of about 200 million, which is being implemented between the Ministry of Employment, Education, and other related sectors. And under that fund, there's about 80 million that will be committed to this Skills Development Fund. And so, for me, the challenge we've had over time has been the lack of sustainability and the lack of ownership. Because all the SDFs have been donor-driven. And so,
government should take control of this.
Government should take control
and put some money
this fund is supposed to be the engine in supporting the expansion of TVET and also supporting startups. We have said that if this SDF is coming into being, the national SDF, it is good. If whether it's continuing or it's actually consolidating. But the emphasis is that we shouldn't just train and leave. We should train and support startups so that we support employment and employability, entrepreneurship, instead of just training.
I mean, for journalists and the deputy education minister coming for you cannot establish something that already exists. I mean, it's, Mr. Duchu so disagree. We'll see what he says about that. Let's go to some of the individual promises, and this is what it brewed, because as I said, there are 19. We're just going to analyze 7 very quickly. We're going to run through them for you. Let's start with the key one. First promise you're going to analyze: continue to increase the manpower resource, teaching facilities, including the use of ICT teaching aids or public tertiary institutions to support the expected increase in student population from the free SHS graduates. Simplify this. Government says we're anticipating free SHS is going to increase enrollments across the tertiary level, right? So the promise is, let's increase both manpower facilities. Your conclusion is that this one is necessary.
Exactly. It is absolutely necessary, because even if we go by the standard 30-35% transition between secondary and tertiary, and the projection the ministry is giving us is, I think, about 40%, which means that we're expecting that 40% of 371,000 or about are going to go to senior tertiary. The numbers are huge. Now, this is to ensure that we expand access to tertiary without using too much brick and mortar interventions. So you don't need to expand hostel facilities at the University of Ghana, for instance, to be able to take more. And so using the open university concept, or what we are used to distance learning, this intervention is supposed to ensure that
that's why the ICT emphasis is important.
So we expand access through virtual training and also the direct interface training, so that no one who qualifies to enter university from the first batch of free senior high school students is denied access to tertiary education on account of the lack of physical space in a faculty or at the hall.
Good point there. So good. And I see that on this one, Mr. Duchu agrees with you. So I agree with you on this one. I mean, so it's going to address a need. There's a need for it.
Exactly.
And we're addressing it. Exactly. My biggest question there is funding. How much is it going to cost us to implement this? And does the NPP have the money? How are they going to find it? And what is the projection in terms of physical structure, ICT investment? I mean, we need to be asking these hard cost questions when promises are made. But your conclusion is that this is something. But I'm also saying, based on analysis, that a bit more, even in trying to put in, tertiary is broad, right? I say being more focused on the public universities, because that's what everybody wants to go there. I recently had the University of Ghana complain that they've run out of space. And if you check let's go to the next page quickly. If you check the source, the NCTE statistical analysis, they up to 58% of everybody who graduates from the tertiary SHS want to go to the tertiary universities. Universities. Public universities, which then puts a lot of pressure on them. Should they increase? Should the investment be shared evenly across all, or there should be some prioritization? As in nursing training colleges should probably get more attention than public university. What would you say? Don't know what you know.
Well, I think that the attention should be focused more on the technical universities.
Okay.
Don't forget that we already have a skills crisis in this country. The secondary to TVET population is about 6%, and the population between 15 and 25 that have skills is about 1%.
Okay.
The average for Europe is about 40% in terms of secondary to TVET population. And so if you really want to solve our unemployment problem, we need to be focusing more on TVET.
And so
both at the secondary and post-secondary and from a tertiary level. And
so put more resources there.
With TVET, with technical universities now in the mix, it will be more progressive to have more of these senior high school graduates entering into the technical universities, or even if they go into the public universities, they should be involved in programs that actually gives them employment skills that will make them employable when they graduate.
Let's go to the next quick promise, and this is a key one, and this is a promise where government says they are now going to allow tertiary students to access loans without guarantors, and then they would also give them a maximum grace period of 2 years. First year you go to the you do your national service, and then one more grace period for you, hoping about the second year you have a job, right? And it says to defer payment of the loans after national service plus an additional 1 year grace period. Now, let's introduce your SMART concept, which is what?
Now, this promise is fantastic. It's fantastic in the sense that
Mr. Duchu is smiling again.
It actually seeks to solve, one of the key issues in our educational system is the inequities system.
And you say it means the SDG.
Of course, SDG Goal 4 aims to ensure that there is no restriction in access to tertiary education in all countries, including Ghana. And so, if you have a situation where, on account of costs, students who qualify to enter university are not able to earn their admission, then it means that there has to be an intervention by the state to facilitate access to tertiary education by such economically vulnerable groups.
Okay.
Now, majority of the students in this country come from the informal sector. Why? Because the informal sector is the biggest in terms of numbers in the country. And so it is usual that many students may not have SNIT guarantors because their families...
Yeah, I struggle to get a SNIT guarantor.
Exactly.
Yeah, so this is a good one. I want to quickly move to a big one here. Sustainability question. You say only 30% of the tertiary graduate students find jobs in the first 3 years of graduation. I want to quickly go to the next slide because that even breaks it down even further. The high graduate unemployment rate remains the threat to the current 65% recovery rate. Up to 35% of students, loan defaulters, use unemployment as an excuse. And this is according to the SLTF. What is that?
Student Loan Trust Fund.
Exactly. 2019. Now, the main point you make is students, when you graduate, 3 years, they still don't have a job, which is what the statistics show. If you match it back to the promise, which gives you a grace period of a maximum of 2 years, your point is that 2 years will come, the students who took the loans won't still be able to pay because the statistics and data say they won't still, 30% of them will still not have jobs to pay.
Exactly. So the crux of the matter is that because the student is now the guarantor and not the SNIT contributor, it means that until the student starts working, the student will not start paying. That is the fact.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you say the student is the guarantor, de facto, you are saying that the job of the student is the guarantor, because immediately the student gets a job, he will be compelled to start paying because of the system that we are told we put in place, syncing your ID, your national ID number to your TIN and through every facet of society, and so you cannot escape paying, but you need to land your first job. And so your first job is your guarantor. Now, you have a situation where ISE has it that 10% of graduates are able to get job after 1 year after completing school. So it will take 10 years for a cohort of graduates that will graduate next year to all get jobs. The challenge here is this. Currently, the Student Loan Trust Fund has a default rate of about 35%.
Yeah.
Out of the 35% of the defaulters give reasons of lack of jobs for the reason of for their default.
Yeah.
And so it means that if this is the number giving the reason for lack of job, and this person is the person guaranteeing for themselves, and the job is actually the guarantor because you don't start paying until you get a job, then it means that this will be a key challenge for the sustainability of this policy.
Yeah.
It will be based on how early graduates are able to get jobs.
Yeah.
That will be the critical determinant on the sustainability of this policy.
Yeah, and maybe so key question, maybe government should consider expanding this. Now let's come to responsibility, and this is the greatest issue for student loans is delayed payment, which is, I guess, links to what you just analyzed, because loans come after end of semester. My brother is in tertiary, always struggling to pay because the loans don't come early. I still have to get out of pocket.
It's very important to note that, one of the key canons of an efficient public policy is its responsiveness, the extent to which the policy responds to a need in society. For us, working closely with NUS, the biggest issue under the school and the student loan scheme is the delayed payment.
Yeah, and so the verdict for us on this is that this is good, but responsiveness is lacking.
Yes, because the loan, there must be a re-engineering of the feeder, of the funding of the loan, such that students, upon receiving their admission letters, not upon becoming students, because my organization has students in tertiary institutions that we sponsor, They come with
once you receive admission letters,
you have 2 weeks to honor or you lose it.
Yeah.
There must be a mechanism within this reform that when you have your admission letter, within 2 weeks, you should be able to get part of the money to pay your admission fee and become a student and access the rest.
And that's an important point.
Very
why
important.
This analysis is key.
Very important.
The minister agrees, and so we'll come to that. Now let's run through this very quickly because we need to bring the minister in. Now, need for teacher training allowance. This promise says they are maintaining the teacher training allowance. It is embedded in the promise. Your analysis say we don't need a teacher training allowance because as an incentive, we have a teacher glut of a sort, correct? I mean, no economic justification since the supply of teachers are far outstrips demand. Let's even go to the numbers. Let's go to the numbers because the numbers will tell us a story. Teacher projection in the Education Strategic Plan 2020 to 2030 says we need what? 262,000 teachers by 2024. But see where we are by December. By December, we are already doing 263,000.
That is if the government recruited 16,000, it promised
that will recruit.
They are started, exactly.
Yeah. So we are already in December 2020.
Yeah.
Far exceeded our own projection by 2024.
Yes, exactly.
So your argument is that this particular policy of giving teacher training allowances as an incentive and a motivation is not really needed.
As a matter of fact, our projection is that by the end of this year, we are going to meet our teacher projection for 2024. We are meeting it earlier. It's a good idea, okay? But we need to maintain equilibrium. You looking at a 3% attrition rate, okay? And so you have 3% of teachers leaving, average 3%, and that's about 8,000. Yeah. And so you need 8,000 teachers at the junior high school, senior high school, and then, junior high school, kindergarten, and then primary level to be able to maintain equilibrium and then maintain the teacher norms, okay, the PTR we spoke about. Unfortunately, we have a situation where our institutions are delivering up to 16,000 teachers. College of Education,
that's a lot.
University of Education, University of Cape Coast. If we add these universities, we are doing more than 16,000.
Yeah.
Okay, we know that not everybody will pass licensure, but at least 65% averagely will pass licensure. And so we are producing twice more than the teachers that we will need.
Yeah. So why do you need to motivate them all to go?
The argument can be made that we are producing teachers for both public and private sectors because per the new national teaching norms of the NTC, for the new national teaching professionalism policy of the NTC, private schools will have to begin engaging only the services of trained teachers. And so we are producing for both public and private. It makes sense. But you don't need an artificial stimulant like an allowance, which costs us about 160 million a year to stimulate this because we already have it. And bear in mind that every year we spend 160 million in paying allowances of trainees. We miss an opportunity of building 400 schools for children in Nalarugu, for children in Mekukrum, because we've used the money to buy food for teachers who are trainees, who also have the assurance of the state that there's already a job.
So that's a key point. Now, both the NDC and the NPP are falling into this trap. Remember that even now the NDC is also now saying, well, we are sorry. We are sorry that we canceled the teacher training allowance and that when we come back, we'll bring it back. I mean, but your argument is that both parties, the analysis show you don't need that because of the teacher training. The position of the NDC and NPP on this manifests the report of the African Development Bank, Africa's Economic Outlook 2020, that our challenge, the key challenges in the education sector in Africa are our spending priorities. We score second when it comes to the percentage of GDP to education among all the continents. We are number 2. Okay. But when it comes to spending efficiency, we scored 47. Okay. We are the last. And we are not only the last. So we are not spending efficiently when it comes to education.
Exactly. We are committing the second highest as a continent in terms of GDP to education. That is fantastic. But when it comes to spending efficiency...
As in where exactly the money is going.
Where the money is going. Spending efficiency, allocative efficiency, we are 47. And we are not only last, but we are 20 percentage points behind the last but one continent. Okay. And so the consensus by these two parties affirms the fact that it is an African problem.
Okay. I mean, and it's a populist one too, because if you put it on and then in another we'll go and do a nice outdooring of your paying the allowance number, because
at Mahama,
and that's how we'll wrap up on this one. But the important thing to note is it is not about what is popular. That's what Manifesto Tracker does. It's about what will deliver the outcomes we need to improve education. And so It may be popular, it may be fun, but does it address a need that we really have? And does it give us the outcomes I told you about at the beginning? Which is what we've done for you tonight. Kofi, I'm grateful.
But let me just say, Ivan, let me just say
briefly.
The reason why the number of promises have reduced in the NPP Manifesto, the experience we have tracking manifestos since 2008, is that when you are in power and you are delivering, you aim to consolidate on your gains.
True.
Okay, and so when you see a government in power making more promises than they made when they were in position, it means that they are
There's trouble.
It means that they are not in power. They are in power, but they are not in power.
Okay.
But when you are in power and you are delivering and you are firmly rooted on your agenda, you should aim to consolidate in the next 4 years. And so you
likely automatically expect less promises.
You definitely
and more repetition of similar ones and consolidation.
Exactly, and then expect more promises from the opposition party.
Which is what we're expecting when they launch the NBC on Monday. Kofi, I'm grateful. Kofi's going to take leave of me now. Stay with me, by the way. And I want to bring in the Deputy Education Minister, Mr. Duchum. Mr. Duchum, so Dr. Yao Duchum, your general reaction to all that we've heard so far. General, we'll come to the specific shortly. Doc.
General, I agree with most of the things that was said. But when it comes to the allowance issue, I know that we have, the supply is good. One of the few countries where we have we're meeting the supply of our teachers in the country. Go to other places, there's serious shortage. But the question that we've had is the deployment. So if somebody has been paying an allowance, you have more leverage in saying you are going to Bosomche and you are going to a village there, we've taken care of you. Somebody that is not, you haven't paid, the leverage that you have in sending them to the places that you need them the most is one thing that we have to talk about as we look at whether we need the allowance or you don't need the allowance. But for now, we need the allowance. We have some people who are seriously need the money. And we have to provide the allowance.
I mean, we're going to interrogate that. I want you to stay with me. After the break, we'll start with this particular point that Doc has made. They want to keep the allowance, but that's the data that we've just presented to you. Support the need for it. Stay with me here on PMS on the Manifesto Tracker. And thank you very much for staying with us. This is the PM Express Manifesto Tracker. We're going to 10:30 today, as we do on a Wednesday. There's a lot to get through because, as you've just observed, there's a lot of analysis. And we haven't even finished the entire manifesto promises on education yet. We just have to isolate a few of the key ones to look at. And I'm delighted to say that the Deputy Education Minister, Dr. Yao Duchum, who you heard earlier made initial submission, is now seated with me. Thanks a great bunch to the folks at the Center for Democratic Development, and of course, Kofi Asari himself from the Africa Education Watch, who helped us put the analysis together to help you make an informed decision about all the promises you've had as far as education is concerned in the NPP Manifesto, CDD, and Africa Education Watch. Of course, Imani Africa, with my friends at the Super Morning Show, will be launching theirs. You should keep an eye for that. Doc, let's start with the last point you're making before we went for the break. You disagree that the teacher allowance should go because it's no longer needed. It was a motivation, but you have a glut, you have a surplus. You don't need it anymore. You say you should.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about teacher supply and demand in Ghana is the fact that we have, the supply is good compared to other countries where there are serious shortages. You go to, there are schools in the US where they don't have science teachers, and you come to Ghana and some people have science degrees and they are looking for a job, that kind of thing. So it's good. But we have a major deployment problem where there's lack of motivation for people to go into the rural areas. So if I happen to have a bachelor's degree in basic education from University of Cape Coast, and I'm not bonded in any way, shape or form, you ask me to go to Bonkoko where I may not get a trotro to go to Kumasi anytime that I want, I may say no, I'm not going. But when the person has gone through a college of education, they know that once you finish and they send you to Bangkok, you have to go. They send you to Continental, you have to go. They send you to Jache, you can't say no, you have to go. But if you went to University of Cape Coast and got your degree, you decide. So we still have a deployment problem. That's why some people will tell you that there are schools without teachers.
Okay, they explain to me the allowance. What does it do? What's the objective for the allowance? What is it?
You see, the thing is this: it obligates the individual. The GS can tell you are going to this village and you are going
because you took my money.
Yes,
okay.
but so until we get the deployment issues squared off and well situated, the allowance will have to continue, because even as you think that combined with the universities, we are training more teachers. But those teachers don't have to go to where you post them to, because you did not provide them the allowance.
I submit to you, Doc, that based on the analysis we did, that the problem and the need is redistribution, which I guess you touched on. So in other words, the focus should be rather on redistributing the oversupply we already have. Most of them focus in Accra and Kumasi and the urban centers, and getting them to the places that they need. So there's an even distribution, not necessarily training more teachers and getting them into.
So even with those that are bonded, right, you still have a distribution issue. So look at those who are not obligated to take the job that you are offering them. You're asking them to work 10 miles and say, I'm not working there. So if you rush into saying, I'm removing the allowance, right, or we are treating you just like other university graduates, you're on your own. Yes, they are on their own, but they're also going to say, I'm not going to Pualuga, I'm not going here.
But the teacher,
I'm on my own.
The person will ultimately need to be employed. Yeah, the person only has two places to go: private sector, public sector. There is, we all know, the public sector is the mother of them. That's the place. So they really don't have a choice in terms of dictating what they will do, because if you do that, you are unemployed.
So if that works to its logical conclusion, we'll not have these deployment problems, where there are schools in the remote areas and it's difficult to get teachers there, even under this regime.
But isn't the problem we can solve without giving money? It's a restructuring problem.
It's an upfront incentive, right? In our other jurisdiction, they do incentive after the fact. Our situation happens to be an upfront investment in you, upfront investment in you to get you hooked to us, and you have to deliver the service because you are hooked to us, we took our money, right? Now you go to other jurisdictions where they remove or where they don't have allowance. They do it after the fact. So if you happen to be posted to a remote area, right, or you teach in an inner city, your loan, the money that you took is forgiven. So in a way, you end up getting to the same destination. Where,
isn't that a better approach?
I mean, no, it depends upon the history of the country.
Going to school,
because in other places, where
so you get a motivation when you actually land in a rural community to teach.
To teach,
not before.
Not before.
Isn't that a better approach?
Not necessarily.
Isn't that what the manifesto should be promising?
Not necessarily. It's a different society, a different culture, a different place. We want to guarantee, right? When they finish and you want to incentivize them, they either take the incentive or they won't. At that time, your rural schools are in limbo. So our approach, where we get them in advance, is a guarantee to make sure that rural schools and places that are hard to place, places where people may not normally accept postings, may also get teachers to go there.
But here's the big question. Here's the big question. You introduced the teacher training allowance. It's been at least 3 years. It still hasn't solved the problem.
No,
isn't that an indication that the teacher training allowance isn't the solution to the problem?
So that's what I'm saying. Imagine if you don't, now that you determine, because they go. First year teachers are sent to places, except that after spending, because GS has a policy, after 3 years, you have literally the right to, seek for transfer. So you can have that situation playing itself out. But the first year teacher postings, they go to the intended destinations. But if they don't have housing and other facilities, after 3 years, GES also allowed them, wherever you are, to be able to say, I want to get a transfer. Then you bring in the attrition. So if the rural teachers rural communities happens to be those that are affected more by the attrition, then you have a challenge there. But I believe the idea of getting them upfront to commit is better than saying after the fact, when you go, what about if they don't go? Then those students there are not going to have teachers. So that to me is the most important justification for the allowance, which means that I have you've committed in advance. When you finish, no argument, no question, you go
but it bears repeating that question. In spite of that, we've implemented this policy for at least 3 years. The problem persists.
I mean, the scale of the problem will be worse if you don't have people who can be sent anywhere.
But should we continue doing the same thing? We'll get the same result?
Basically, if you don't do that, the situation will be worse. So I believe, yes, the allowance is necessary.
Should we consider restructuring it to the one that you proposed?
No, I didn't propose that.
Or you didn't propose the one that you cited from the other jurisdiction?
I think the cultures are different, the countries are different.
So it won't apply here?
It won't apply here.
Finally, I just want to give you the statistics, pure numbers. And remember what Kofi said about the ratings we have in terms of efficiency in spending. When it comes to what we are spending per GDP, we are top of the bunch. But when it comes to how we are spending efficiently, not so much. If you look at it per our own strategic plan, 2030, we need 262,000 teachers. Per your own statistics, if you go ahead to recruit the 8,000 that you have in the pipeline, you will, in fact, exceed what you need in 2024 by December this year.
Now, Kofi also reminded all of us that now the private sector will also need trained teachers. So that was not something that was factored into this projection. The projection was looking at the public. Now you have private sector based on NTCA requirement that will also need to have certified teachers. So that then changes the dynamics and changes the projection.
Let's go to the other promise that I saw you disagree quite vehemently with just by shaking your head, which is the bit that talks about the promise to establish the Skills Development Fund. Just to read that particular one that we flagged. You say that as part of your TVET intervention, you were going to complete the implementation of the 5-year strategic plan on TVET and then establish a national skills development fund.
You see, the key word
established already there.
You are missing the key word.
Which is what?
We have a skill development fund. We don't have a national skill development fund. We have a skill development that depended on the benevolence.
Goodness me.
Yeah, yes.
The skill development fund is national already. It's a national. It's a national skill development fund.
No, the nation depended on the NIDA when the first tranche got finished. You see, when donor agencies control a fund, right? Especially when it's one country, they call the shots in a number of instances. So all that we are saying is that the NIDA's one is also running out. We now need...
You call it the NIDA's one?
No, I mean the second, Kofi said it.
Yeah, I make the point. It's the NIDA is just funding the Skills Development Fund. But that is a government. It's a government vehicle.
It's a government vehicle.
Just like anything else we do in this country.
I mean,
financed by a donor.
You know, that is what we are dispensing with and say the nation needs to take care of its own skills development fund.
Yeah, but that's not what this communicates. You're going to establish a national skills development fund.
Yes.
But the skills development, and I made a point that if you look at the skills development fund itself, the skills development fund itself has a plan. Post the NIDA's sponsorship this year, their plan is to migrate to government dependence.
Their plan?
Yes.
It's
already there. In fact, it's stated in the policy that they have already.
Let me tell you, you may have more inside information than I do, but what I know is that the Skills Development Fund, funded by donors, the funds are running out. Now the nation is looking at how do we structure a fund that will respond to the needs of our nation. It's as simple as that.
So what you're saying is, the NPP will fund the SDF.
Yes, it's saying they certain we are.
But you say you're going to extend. That is the thing.
The thing is this. We all agree. I mean, maybe it's just between it. It's just.
I mean, I just want clarity. I think you brought the clarity.
Yes, because.
So what this is that the MPP in your next government, if you win the election, by the way, you will fund the SDF.
No, of course we win the election. Of course we win the election. So by the grace of God and good people of Ghana looking at what we've done, there will be a national SDF
driven by funding from the government. That's yes. You dig into your pocket. Now it leads me to the big question there when it comes to manifesto analysis. If you are going to fund it, we haven't done that before because the state has struggled to fund it.
No, you remember Kofi said there's a World Bank funding
that is
coming, and the portion of it is committed to that. Yes. So he provided the answer.
But even that even makes my case even stronger because the point is even the next SDF that you say you're going to bring in is still a World Bank component in there. So it's not entirely true
but the World Bank,
going forward you're going to purely fund it from taxpayers' resources.
You see. Skill Development Fund, I know a bit about it based on how other countries do it. You have corporate representation, sometimes have corporate voluntary donations into the fund. Companies participate fully in this, right? But other skill funds that I've seen, you have full corporate participation in how monies come into it. There are places where a certain amount companies commit to put a certain amount in because they know you are developing the skills for them. The skills that are coming out. Our nation's corporate entities will not be competitive if they don't have the people with the right skill set to really come and work for them. So a number of companies in other jurisdictions are very much interested in education. And you have a corporate roundtable on education. They literally call the shots when it comes to curriculum development because they're not going to sit there to pay taxes and then the schools are run in such a way that the people they are preparing cannot even come and work for them. And when they come, they have to spend a whole lot of money retraining. You know, so if you, in other places, when they set it up well, corporate participation is key. Corporate contribution is key. It's not all just coming from the national kitty, but you have a situation where, by virtue of the fact that they are fully invested in it for their own good, for their own sake, you have more participation in that direction. I don't have the details of this to speak to it, but I know that the best practices is where you ensure serious corporate participation, not donor agency participating so much as corporate entities participating and saying, these are the people we want. We need this kind of investment in the people. We need this kind of skills. And by the way, they can come and intern with us. And there are some places where companies get part of funding for training so that people can get the real training, that not book training. Not school-based training, but corporate-based training that we need. And if you look at what the Germans have done with the dual TVET programs, most of the training take place in corporate-sponsored location or sometimes at the workplace of the company, because that is when you really get what you need to fit into the company. And a number of companies like the fact that the children are coming to train with them because they are looking at them, and when they see the ones that they like, those are the ones that they immediately hire, and they don't have to leave and go, and then they go out there to advertise in the newspapers to recruit them.
Let me push you a bit more finally on this. So World Bank is coming on board after Danida.
Kofi volunteered information that I have to check.
Yeah.
So I don't want to come here and make.
Okay. So it's not something that you say. Okay.
I'll check.
But the promise is it's going to be 100% funded by the government in your next term if you win elections.
I will not say that.
But you said that is what
it's an initiative of the nation, not donor agency. That's the distinction.
I'm confused now.
No,
you have to clarify. You said national.
I'm saying that the nation initiates, not donors.
But that's my point.
Not donors.
But we already have that's my point. You have a skill development fund already in existence. No, so when you say the nation is going to initiate,
a skill development fund fully funded by one country. And we thank them for doing that.
Yeah.
And the funds are running out.
Yeah.
The nation should not sit there and say because donor funds are gone, we shouldn't do anything.
Okay, so
and then we have international best practices as to how you set this up. And based on my understanding, you're using those best practices where you fully involve companies in the whole structure. So
what you're saying is that I just want clarity, because this is the whole point about manifesto tracker. Just get clarity on the promise. When you say you're establishing a skills development fund, the skill development already exists. We know
national skills development.
Exactly. So your emphasis on the national. Operationalize the national for me. What is the national? How are you interpreting
the idea that we've all said that the NIDA has been holding the
So you're taking donors out of the equation?
Yes, if they want to bring them about, this is a national initiative, not donor initiative. Okay, so that's the distinction.
That's a distinction. Okay, so so this is almost like the Ghana Beyond Aid version of the Skills Development Fund.
That's your interpretation, and I respect that.
I'm just clarifying.
I respect your interpretation.
So now I get a clarity. It circles back to the question I asked earlier. How are you, if you're going to do this, how is the nation going to fund the resources?
I'll get a document for you. I think there should be something there that will explain further how this is done. But I give you the broad. I gave you the broad parameters.
But the whole committee drafted the manifesto.
I mean, the thing is this: you have to really look at manifesto. I've been a manifesto committee this time, I was a manifesto committee member.
On the 26th?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. And at the manifesto level,
wasn't this the Education Ministry's input?
Of course, Education Ministry.
So you should have the documents. You should have the data.
No. What we need to understand is this: all that we're doing, this is semantics. The most important thing is that we are not going to allow the donor-funded skills development fund to end without a replacement. Yeah. The government is forward-looking, forward-thinking, and that forward-thinking government is saying, "I'm not going to sit there for what the donors have done for us to just end." And there will be no money. Yeah. Therefore, let us establish a national skills development fund. Simple as that. You
want the voters to believe you. Believe you, you must provide them with additional funds beyond the promise.
But the voters, I want, since you brought them in, I want the voters.
The details are important.
I want the voters to know that through the benevolence of other countries, we've had a skill development fund that has been supporting in skills training. It's done a fantastic job. The funds is almost gone. And the government says, since it's important that we have skills training, I'm going to set up a fund so that...
The fund exists already?
No.
We are not going to make sure that donors are out of it.
The donor is gone. So why do you have to depend on a donor? No. The donors' funds, as Kofi said, is running out.
The Skills Development Fund is part of the TVET Act. The TVET Act creates a TVET body, and the TVET body then, as a result of that, forms the fund to now operationalize the TVET. That's how it works.
The TVET strategic plan that has been implemented here, whose implementation has begun. In that strategic plan, there was a need to set up